Okay, welcome to the first full episode of A Case in Marketing. My name is Michael, and I'm looking forward to doing this series. I think there's going to be a lot to learn from it, mostly from other people, not me. So, glad you're here with us. Uh, I do feel like I need to practice a little what I preach and what I'm getting from others, so I'm going to start with a case of my own, and hopefully there's some things that you can learn from it. We found some really fun results, and so I wanted to share those. And this is actually really recent. This is something we've been running for the last 4 weeks or so, so it's been fun. Uh, if you don't know what we do at CloudApp, we have a little tool that sits on your desktop that makes it really easy to share, well, to capture and share screenshots and videos instantly. So you capture the content really fast. You can annotate it, and then immediately when you've done that, a shareable link is copied to your clipboard, and you can, send it to whoever you need to. It really makes workflow easy and super fast. We are a freemium model, so we get a ton of people coming in, and one of our big goals lately has been doing better at activating those folks. So getting them to use the app and actively use the app and be retained and use it over time. So there's a lot of different things we've done in place, put in place with onboarding and things like that. One continual thing we do to help retention is an email. We'll call our weekly recap. And what that email does is it gives our users information on how they used CloudApp and their activity. Other firms do similar things to this. Grammarly does something like that. Google has some interesting things with, like, if you've left reviews or whatever. So this is our version, and there were some things that we needed to change to try and make it better. So a couple of the key things that we ran into were that we wanted to obviously get more people to use the app, and we wanted to give them a little more value. So I will explain for those on audio with the podcast. I'll talk you through it and try and make sure that you don't lose too much out of the visuals that I'm walking through here on the video. But there were some big things we needed to accomplish. So the first one was that our old weekly recap, which is sent out every Monday morning, has been around for a while, and we've made some branding updates, and we needed to match those up. So the old email had a kind of like lightish blue gray background. It had this green little bar at the top. Some of the text, just the design of the email looks a little dated, at least to me it does. There's a lot of minimalistic design right now, and there's a lot packed into these boxes of content within the email, and so I felt like it needed to lighten up a little bit. I'll walk through how we a little bit of the content that we had in here. We want people to know what they did and how much time they saved with our app, right? So that's our main pitch, is that if you use CloudApp within your workflow and all the other stuff you do, it speeds things up, and so you save a lot of time. So we tell people how many, at least in the old email, we told folks how many pieces of content they created, which we call drops, how much time they saved from creating those drops, and then the day of the week that they were most active. Then there is, and quite honestly, that's the extent of the information of usage that we used to give people. There was a section on new updates and features, and then one that we asked people to share the app to increase virality and stuff. So things missing here. We actually, even right before we changed this up, there was a few people that had given us compliments for it, and they said they liked it. But for me, I felt like it was a little superficial. There wasn't enough meat and good enough value in here for people to come back. And our open rates were reflecting that a little bit. They were dropping. Now, um, while the open rates themselves were below benchmarks of what you might see in something like a newsletter, um, they were still the point I was comfortable with for several reasons. One of which is that this email gets sent to not just the active users, but also the people that have dropped off for a while. So we don't send it to the really old ones, but we would send it to individuals who hadn't used it for several weeks. Because if you get an email saying, hey, you haven't used CloudApp for a while, and then you see the 0 minutes in time saved, and even better if they used it for a while and there's like a to date or total minutes saved, and they're not adding on to it, they can see that that might be a good idea to start using it again. So it's a reactivation thing, and we actually define the conversion of this email by that. So if an individual has not used CloudApp in 7 days, then they get this email and then use CloudApp, then that marks it as a conversion. So and I didn't feel like the content in here, so drops created, just time saved, and most active day, really gave folks enough reason to get back in to CloudApp to use it. So big things are that we wanted to increase visibility. So this was getting a little stale, and we open rates, we just wanted people to get more people to consume it. So it needed probably a refresh to do that. We needed to match branding because we had made some branding updates. So if you go to getcloudapp.com, our site, you can see the difference now. We really bought into this white space, kind of minimalistic. There's no green really on here like this, so that was out of our palette. So we needed to make those updates. And then we wanted to improve retention. Okay, so what we moved to and why we made those changes. So right off the beginning, if you're on the video, you can see we went with a white minimalistic background. I had found a template that would work, and really matches well the design of our website. This was really important for me because I think there's, at least in marketing there, especially the B2B space, what I've noticed with a lot of companies' emails, the marketing ops and email folks are really good at process. They're good at delivering valuable content, but sometimes the design, because we're working fast, and I'm actually going to conflict myself a little bit here. There are times where I don't feel like design is as important, and we spend too much time on it. But in this case, I felt like it was important because when your experience in the branding and the content and the feel of that content matches across all channels, it makes the brand seem like it's got it together. I've signed up for several companies, email threads and stuff, and even here we've got it a little bit that I'm trying to fix up, that it's not the same. You come here and it's like, okay, website is clean, white, I see the color trend here, and then you get an email from that company and it's totally different, right? Like different color palette, doesn't have the same feel, my copy might even be, the way it's written different. And while I don't think it's a negative experience, I do feel like there is added trust subconsciously that the brand has got it together if the design is unified. So in this case, that was really important to me. I wanted it to be familiar when we had this new one. So the beginning content is essentially the same. We call it our productivity dashboard now, but we lead out with drops created, time saved, and the most active day in the week. I made some changes to the way the most active day of the week was presented, and before it had its own section here, and listed out all the days of the week, and the one that was most active was highlighted. Visually, I think that's really compelling, but there was more stuff that I wanted to get done with this new one, so I cut it down and made it so all they had to do was read in a single space to get the information that they were, as far as the most active day. Here you'd have to read in two spots, most active day in the box on the left, and then analyze the graph. So I feel like it's a little bit faster, and it doesn't take as much space because we're not, putting in all of the days that you weren't active or most active. So we have the bare, but we have the same stuff, and it leads out with the same. So I wanted it to be a little bit familiar. Then we augmented and added to the information around your content. So we decided to show people, okay, you might have created 86 drops last week. Here's how that splits out, I guess, over different content types with screenshots, videos, annotations, GIFs, and then generic file uploads, like you can drag and drop anything to CloudApp and have a shareable link. This is a small play too to increase product usage depth, right? Or breadth, or whatever is the right word there. Typically, it is often that we see certain users just use maybe just screenshots, or even maybe they just use us for file uploads. And we wanted to make sure that they were aware, that users were aware of the other things that they can do. And so, it's never fun to see a zero. And visually, I think having these, we got screenshots, videos, and annotations, which I think are the premier use cases of our app, and then GIFs and files below that in text. And we wanted to also add some team information for those that have paid accounts and are on, multiple users to account. So this is going to be iterative, and we're going to add more over time, which will be fun. But for now, we just added the total team drops, how you stack up in content creation amongst those on your team, and then the weekly contribution. So we add a little extra CTA there to invite new team members. So that's a growth hack, but the focus is really, just creating a little bit of sense of competition and camaraderie from those that use the app. Hopefully sparking conversation about CloudApp internally as like an organic thing. And then lastly, we added, which this kind of is similar to the new features, although we've it's more activation focused, so it's core features instead. And when you first sign up, none of these core features will be checked, and they'll be checked as you do them. And then you're congratulated if you reach them all. There is a subtle paywall CTA here. One of the core features we've listed is a call to action, which is essentially you can put a button on your content that sends people to where you want them to go. And it's a paid account feature only. So while we're not asking anybody to upgrade here, but we do call attention to that one of the most important features we feel like exists is under the paywall. And I don't think I need to explain too much farther beyond that on what the point is. So what did we get from this? As I said, open rates beforehand were, for this kind of a newsletter, were lower than average. They're around 15.5% in the aggregate over several weeks, and that was like the low. They had been slowly declining a little bit. It was getting a little stale. We moved, and open rate benchmarks you have to take them with a grain of salt, I think, because there's so many dependent factors, right? One of which I think is the biggest one is just your database size. Especially for CloudApp, our database size for the size of our company is massive. And like I went to a HubSpot user group meeting several months ago, and in the course of the presentation, there were a few people talking about the size of their databases, and somebody says 10,000, one person said 30,000, maybe I think another one said like 100. And I'm thinking to myself, like, and they've got like bigger marketing teams, right? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like we get that sometimes, depending, on in like a couple of weeks, not the 100, by the way, but some of these other numbers we get in like a couple of weeks, and that's their whole database that they're nurturing, right? So a lot of times with like the big databases and stuff, you might get a lot of stuff incoming, and maybe the intent isn't as higher, so you have to accept different metrics than what somebody else might, and establish your own benchmarks. So benchmarks are always just a, like a starter point, maybe like, okay, this is generally what people get. I know now that as I start sending emails, I know maybe let's see if I get close to that. If you're lower than that, then, or above it, quite honestly, answers just need to be found for your specific context, because otherwise you're going to get caught up in stuff that doesn't apply to your audience and messaging and your own marketing tactics, and that's going to get you into trouble. So in our case, 15% was okay, and I was actually okay with it in the sense of like it wasn't detrimental to our business efforts. Of course I wanted it bigger. We were able to move the open rates from 15% to the first two peaked out at 22. So that's over a 33% increase in open rates, and it was awesome because the fresh content, I think the trust that it immediately established by the design elements I was talking about is getting people to come back, and we haven't seen a drop off yet. We'll see over time if people get tired of it or whatever, but initially it's been good. The more important thing though is that the open rates led us to the potential to achieve what we were really hoping to achieve. In this new version, in the old version 2, we don't actually send people anywhere. The goal of this content is just purely consumption. That hopefully helps motivate them to do something in the app. Obviously we can't get like a time on email type metric, but our conversion rates for this old one, meaning, again, let me review, if they hadn't used the app in 7 days and then used it after receiving this, was around 7 to 7.5%. With this new email, we're over 9%. So a massive jump in conversion rates, and when you're talking about thousands of users, that's a pretty good bump. That's a nice bump to what you're trying to achieve. It's interesting because not all the time do you tackle big campaigns like this and see immediate results, at least as large as what we've seen. I would say most of the time it's a really iterative process that you tackle, from now on. Like what we tackle with this email here is going to be iterative, right? We're going to look at, okay, is there team information that's more valuable than this that will, people are going to enjoy more? Is there like additional user specific information that we can add? Can we add more of these core features so that if they, if they've completed all of them, it switches out to a new set and they have to start over with like a new, more in-depth set? Those kinds of changes are going to be really, really small over time that slowly add up. However, occasionally you run into like moments and things within your marketing and campaigns where you can see that there's a difference that you need to make from this to go to something like this. We didn't know or necessarily predict the kind of improvement that we got, but what it tells me is that there are certain things that can yield really massive results. You have to do them with intention though. If I just look at this old email and I say to myself, I don't like it, I want to make it prettier, you're going to run into issues, right? It's not accomplishing what the intention really, because it's putting yourself in the mind of the consumer. As a consumer, as a user of CloudApp, when I see this, there's certain things missing. I don't have as much trust in the brand. I wish there was more information. It's not as fun as it could be, right? So when you put yourself in that mindset and then try and actually deliver, then, well, it's hard to predict the positive outcomes that come out of it. So, fun exercise that we had. Hopefully you can take some lessons to it to your own work. And in the future, we'll have interviews with other people that have had similar, innovative, fun case studies that we want to share. So, thanks for joining.